For its part, the Centre for Child Law has partnered with the South African Human Rights Commission to launch an information booklet looking at how to get children documented. This booklet has been developed to curb high rates of undocumented children across the country. To tell us more about this effort, I'm joined now by Liesl Muller, Senior Attorney at the Centre for Child Law. Liesl, good afternoon. Welcome to Today on eNCA. Thank you very much for your time. Why have you deemed it necessary and important to launch this booklet now?
Thank you very much, and it's lovely to be here with you today. The Centre for Child Law has what we call a free legal clinic, right? So we operate like a firm, but we provide legal services to people who can't afford it, and in our case, specifically children. And unfortunately, one of the main issues we see in the clinic is children who do not have documents, of which more than 80% are South African citizens. So there are various reasons for this. Often people just do not know where to start, what kind of documentation they need. But then there are also more difficult issues, like people don't necessarily know that they can get nationality also from their father. So can an unmarried father take a child to be registered and give that child their citizenship? Yes. But there are people who don't know these things. So we have done this booklet to explain to people exactly how it works when you have to document your child. But we are also hoping that this document is easy enough to understand so that even a child can read it and understand whether they are a South African citizen or not, or perhaps they are a refugee and they understand how they can approach the Department of Home Affairs to get documentation.
In how many languages are you publishing this booklet?
You have got me there. At the moment, we only have it in English. But yesterday when we launched it, we discussed with the Human Rights Commission that we are going to translate it into more languages because we realize that it is a very widespread problem. And so it definitely needs to be translated into more languages.
Yeah, and that will enable you to reach even further into the communities that would need it. Now, why is it important for children to be documented, or what are the implications for children when they are not documented? Because I've seen your tweets as the Centre for Child Law, where you say a quarter of South African children are currently at the risk of being undocumented. That's quite a big chunk.
Mm. Yes. So there are different ways to estimate how many children are affected. If you look at government statistics around how many people are accessing SASSA grants, how many people are not accessing SASSA grants because they've never been documented, or if you look at birth records, but then at Home Affairs records, you will find that you can make an estimate of at least 500,000 children being undocumented. And if you want to estimate how many children might be affected, you can look at the statistic of 25% of children in South Africa do not live in the nuclear family structure, which is with two parents who are married. And that's what the Birth Registrations Act and process is designed for. And if you fall outside of that, let's say you live with your granny or your mother has passed away, it becomes more difficult. And so those are the people that we're trying to reach, because that 25% are all people who might face barriers to documentation. Okay. So now, if you don't have a document, of course, you have the right to a document in itself, but without a document, I'm sure you've seen earlier in the year that schools do not admit children without documents, which is why we had to have a court case in recent years about which told us then that all children must go to school even without documents, but we still see that that is an implementation problem. Healthcare, without a document, it's often difficult to go to a hospital. You will struggle to get a SASSA grant without a document. Eventually, you won't be able to get an ID. You will not be able to vote, work, and eventually, if you do not record your identity, you can become stateless, which is a situation in which your nationality is completely unknown and no country recognizes you as a citizen. And that is obviously the extreme end, which we are trying to avoid.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I remember interviewing a number of activists in the human trafficking space who say that it's also a big, let's call it a facilitator, it make it easier for children to be trafficked across borders when nobody knows who they are, where they come from. And we as a country, Liesl, we have a duty to make sure that all our children are documented.
Absolutely. It's a very basic duty. It's one of the first, in fact, it is the first right that a child is specifically given in the Constitution. In Section 28, it says that a child has the right to a name and a nationality from birth. And in the international law, it also says that you have the right to have your nationality and your identity preserved. So what's important about that is that a child doesn't have that power often to preserve their identity, keep official records, but those things will become incredibly important as one grows up. And we have a duty as the country where these children live to make sure that we keep those records and make proof available to them. So what we have at the moment is a system which does not is not child friendly, and it's not friendly to any kind of situation which is not within the normal. And we are just receiving too many requests for children who are undocumented to get documentation. And these are South African children. So it's not about migration even. It's about children needing documents, and South Africa basically at the moment is failing them. So what we're doing, what we can to empower, and in the same time, we will work with Home Affairs and the Commission to try and address the systemic problems.
Yeah, and Home Affairs have a good pool of people who are language experts that you could rely on to translate this document into many other languages. When do you think you will do that? You said you've spoken with the Human Rights Commission at the launch yesterday, but I think it's very important not for us to lose the fact that you will gain more if this document, this booklet was published sooner than later in different languages.
Yes, let me say we will do our best to find the funding to do that.
Yeah, well, let me suggest,
I really want that to happen. I think it's very important.
Yeah, let me suggest that you should lean on Home Affairs because they've got a pool of translators. After all, what you are doing is aligned with international law. With international. But I leave that up to you. Thank you very much, Liesl, for your time this afternoon. That's Liesl Muller.
I'll make a plan.
Senior attorney. Good luck with that. Senior attorney at the Center for Child Law. And together with the South African Human Rights Commission, yesterday they launched a very important initiative, which is a booklet looking at how to get children documented. I mean, in our country, apparently, a high number, like a quarter of our children are undocumented. There's a lot of implications. Well, for